Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers, painted in August of 1888. Vincent van Gogh was a Dutch painter who spent most of his creative years in France, where he was near his beloved brother, Theo. Van Gogh had dabbled in everything from teaching to dealing art in books to briefly becoming a preacher. When he settled in Paris in 1886, he was introduced to the art world through Theo, who in conjunction to dealing art was Vincent's sole provider and confidant. There he discovered Impressionist artists at the May Expedition of 1886 and was introduced to the essential works of Edgar Degas, Mary Cassatt, Georges Seurat, and Paul Gauguin, among others. Their use of numerous, slight, yet noticeable brushstrokes were able to capture the fleeting effects that light and shadow cast on their works. Vincent was drawn to the floral works of Adolphe Monticelli and Edouard Manet, and their use of complementary colors. Monticelli's still life flowers were crafted from thick impasto paint that Van Gogh admired. Vincent saw the thick, bold layers of paint in Manet's work as simplicity of technique and desired to embody a similar style. Theo encouraged Vincent's expanding palette and his love for flora, as he felt it would be a more profitable market for his brother. In a letter to Theo, Vincent wrote, "Always continue walking a lot and loving nature, for that's the real way to learn to understand art better and better. Painters understand nature and love it and teach us to see it." Although they met the year previous, Vincent's friendship with Paul Gauguin didn't begin until the two met at a small Paris exposition where Gauguin's interest in Vincent's earlier series of Parisian sunflowers may have been the catalyst that sparked his most eminent works. Van Gogh, although he had only sold one painting in his lifetime, did trade 3 of these Parisian sunflowers to Gauguin, who sold them off after Vincent's death. One of which was purchased by one of Van Gogh's earliest influence, Edgar Degas. Although Vincent developed his technique and Impressionist mannerisms in Paris, it was his move to the Yellow House in sunny Arles where he could pause from the bustle of the city, focus on his art, and work outdoors that he composed his most grand renderings. He wrote to Theo, "To want to see another light, to believe that looking at nature under a brighter sky can give us more accurate ideas of the Japanese way of feeling and drawing, wanting finally to see the stronger sun." Vincent had an affiliation for Japanese woodblock prints, the provincial summer, and the color yellow, and the happiness these components brought him. He had always envisioned the Yellow House as an artist's loft to be shared with another creative like himself, and hoped his successful friend Gogh would join him in Arles. Gogh accepted, but lingered in the north, thus increasing Vincent's already growing anxieties surrounding his inferiority in the art realm. In August of 1886, he had the idea to decorate the Yellow House in a series of sunflowers, which he believed would impress Gogh upon his arrival. Symbolically, sunflowers may have held religious weight for Van Gogh due to their connection with humankind's love for God in traditional Dutch culture. In literature, Kate Greenaway describes sunflowers to represent adoration or haughtiness, depending on their height and which way they are facing, which also may have added to Van Gogh's fascination. Provence sunflowers would have been at their peak in mid-August and may have served as a replacement for Van Gogh's lack of human models. Due to their quickness to wilt, Van Gogh worked from morning until night, sustaining himself with alcohol and coffee. Recalling to Theo, "To key myself up a bit, to reach the high yellow note I reached this summer." Van Gogh completed a series of 4 brilliant sunflowers in less than a week. Through his letters, it is determined that he spent about 1 full day on each, waiting until they dried to add the final touches. The first in his series is pulsating with the cool hues of bright turquoise and green, contrasting greatly with the 3 buttery blossoms erupting from the pot below. In the Dutch tradition, Vincent had painted his earlier Parisian series with shadowy, dark backgrounds. This is yet another distinction between his mental state while in dismal Paris, in contrast with this Arles summer. One can just imagine just how pleased Van Gogh must have been in Arles that summer, optimistic for the future he would share with Gogh in his yellow house. The second contains twice as many flowers, but the additional 3 are lying on the table in front of the pot. In comparison to his first, this one is less botanically realistic, with stress on the shape and style of the petals. It is as if, after Van Gogh had captured the flowers in their truest state, he felt he was able to take creative liberties. This shows in the orange outlines that hug the blossoms, stems, petals, pot, and table. He affectionately referred to these outlines as halos, emphasizing the stark contrast between the golden flowers and the royal blue backdrop. These halos were called cloisonnism, and was a term coined by artist Edward Desjardins, which described a method of flat, bold images defined by a dark line. His third in the series is 14 Sunflowers, depicting 14 different flowers at various stages from buds to seeds. It is possible that the 2 pairs of blooming heads I have circled were later added after initially being single blooms, as a letter to Theo indicates this piece having 12 flowers. Van Gogh's Veronese green background is fashioned together with his characteristic cross-hatching, giving the illusion of an intricate woven cloth. This stands in powerful prominent contrast to the ochre orange of the flowers and the table below. The lines that Van Gogh added along the table and around the pot give emphasis to it, while also grounding it in the image. The white reflection mark is indicative of the sunny Arles weather inevitably spilling into the room where the pot is. The turquoise background only adds to the idea of a clear, cloudless day. Finally, Vincent's dark signature on the pot balances the sunflower's dark centers in the upper half of the painting, though some have considered it a distraction. Similarly to 14 Sunflowers, Van Gogh referred to the final piece of the series with less flowers than are depicted, indicating that the buds in the lower left may have been added as an afterthought, and some speculate a 16th disguised among the cluster on the left side. What 15 and 14 sunflowers share in general composition, they differ in detail. 15 sunflowers is a bit more diffused as well as smaller than those in the previous. Instead of a contrasting background, Vincent chose to stick with the warm theme of a mellow yellow behind his vivid tawny flowers. In a letter to his sister, Vincent's exceptional talent as a colorist are heightened as he compares positioning colors in a painting to making them gleam through their distinctions to designing costumes or arranging precious jewelry. Again, Vincent uses his signature to offset the blue line separating the wall from the table, as well as the hints and highlights of blue in the leaves of the flowers. The line on the right side of the pot appears to be a mistake or unfinished, but it only adds to the impressionist style that Van Gogh captured so well. It was surprising to learn that upon looking at the shape and height of the pot and taking into consideration the length and weight of the sunflowers, it would have been impossible for the vessel to support more than a few flowers. This tells us that Van Gogh was not meticulously copying these flowers in their pot beside his easel, but rather visualizing what a large bouquet would look like if inside a stout pot. However, looking back at 3 sunflowers, it's possible that Van Gogh did in fact paint this one directly from a pot of flowers, as the textures are the most detailed and the shorter stalks and reduced number of flowers would have made it possible to stand in such a pot. It is estimated that Vincent used at least 10 tubes of yellow paint on each of his sunflowers, as he had laid it on in a thick impasto style. Vincent relied on Theo to support him, and placed his paint orders with him in Paris, all too aware of the burden he was. He was also requesting standard artist's canvas that would cut from a roll and be fixed to a wooden frame. In one of his countless letters to Theo, Van Gogh wrote, "You know the peony is Jeanine's, and the hollyhock belongs to Gogh, but the sunflower is mine in a way." How lovely yellow is! It stands for the sun.